once we've had this deputation, we'll have morning tea.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and councillors, and I will attempt to be brief. I just wanted to talk about the capital. Vicky doesn't believe I can be. I just wanted to talk about the Capital Endowment Fund, which was something that the council put aside 75 million a number of years ago to put funds aside over and above what we had earned from our trading assets for economic development and for social issues. The paper that I read about it in the paper that I read, I downloaded, I think has got a number of holes in it, and issues like significance test that there's no material impact on rates, I think is completely wrong. And the viability of this fund was only tested really against low interest rates, and I think that it raises the question of whether the guidelines for investment need revisiting by you as councillors. It considered 3 options for the fund, and it completely missed out an additional option which I think should have been which outside bodies could become managers of this fund. And I'll come to that in a minute. It's being used partially for internal investment, which means the fund isn't earning the potential that it could. If the $100 million is put into the pot, the black hole called debt, the council will only be saving the cost of interest, which will be 3.5, 3.7% probably. I would think that's about what you're paying.
Plus the capital repayment.
Pardon?
Plus the capital repayment.
Yes. But, so I think I support the concept of active management. I think that one of the things that the council should consider is an outside agency managing the Capital Endowment Fund. I looked at the possibility of which public agencies would be able to manage this. I looked at the National Super Fund, which has a good rate of return, and I also looked at the Rata Foundation, which is the Canterbury Community Trust, was the Canterbury Community Trust. The investment policy should be conservative, transparent, and locally accountable, in my opinion. And so when you apply these tests, the Rata Foundation comes up as a solution. I approached the chairman of the Rata Foundation, Roger Bridge, and asked him would they be interested in potentially managing this fund, and he said yes. When you look at what they earned in the last year, it was 10.2% return on investment after allowing for inflation. If you apply this to what the fund earned this year compared with the Rata Foundation, you will have earned an additional $5.4 million in earnings extra. And in my opinion, you may have missed the earnings of between 20 and 30 million over the last 5 years. This proposal would reduce the rates burden by between 1 and 2%. So I sit here and make an offer, and I think listening to the Victoria Square discussion before, there's a lot of us out in the city that want to assist you people in your huge burden as councillors, and I'm doing this as one. I've spoken with Roger Bridge, and he would be prepared to go into a little working party. I would like to make a suggestion that maybe Councillor Manji and Councillor Turner and Roger Bridge and myself sit down, go through all of the elements of this investment, and come back to the Strategy and Resources Committee with a solution. I think that to close this fund would be a serious mistake. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Phil?
Well, just for clarification, perhaps as councillors we need to discuss this, but my recollection is that the last Strategy and Finance Committee, in effect, the fund was closed. So anyway, that hasn't come to council, you don't think?
No, it hasn't come to council, and it has to be, it'll come to council next time, but I think you're suggesting that a group of you meet between now and then, so that you can actually report back to the next council meeting. It has to go through a public consultation, which is the annual plan process. So we don't have the power to close it down without a public engagement, and I don't think that was the. I think the recommendation from Strategy and Finance was that it go forward for consideration as part of the annual plan process. But that's my memory of what we did, as opposed to what I. In fact, I wasn't at the meeting.
No, exactly right. But it's exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah.
My question to Garry, though, is that if, in fact, say the fund goes to the management through the Rata Fund, how, in fact, if there's an urgent request, for example, from our residents, how, in fact, as a council we could access some of that money if it's being managed by another whole fund?
I don't know if you've made a call like that.
No, we don't spend the capital, we spend the income. They would still give us the income.
You'd still get the income.
As long as that was available.
Yeah, but that I think what Gary's suggesting is that a small group of people go away and assess whether this is a viable possibility. Because if it's viable, then it should be put in the mix for consideration as part of the annual plan process. So, Yanni and then Andrew.
Yeah, thank you, Garry, for the deputation. I was trying to find the graph of the initial public consultation when the fund was set up, and from memory it was quite overwhelming. People wanted to go to civic and community projects, and not so much economic. Although
it was 70% economic, 30% civic.
Yeah, that's how it was set up, but the public consultation was quite different. But do you think it would be also timely to look at how the fund's being utilised as to what it's been funding and whether we should look at any tweaks there as part of this process?
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about management of the fund, and then as councillors you decide on the policy of how it's divvied up.
Right.
Yeah, Andrew.
Thank you. So just to clarify, it's the management of the fund, as in the investment management of the fund, that you're suggesting that we set the working group up to talk about.
Correct.
The distribution of the interest on the fund would remain a matter for council. You're not suggesting that any outside agency get involved in that.
No.
And just a second question. I'm assuming that this matter will come to the next council meeting with the minutes of the Strategy and Finance Committee meeting where this was considered. Do you feel that the working group would be able to do its work in the relatively short time period between now and then, so that any recommendation from the group can be considered alongside that report?
Yes.
Great.
Tim?
Thank you, and thanks, Garry. I think the question that you've raised is actually a really good one. Whether it's the Rata group or whatever, managed by a public fund or a private management company to get the best return possible to the people of Christchurch is actually a very good question. So thank you for raising it.
The reason why I recommend, my personal view is the Rata Fund, because Rata Foundation rather, is that it's got its own transparency. It is accountable to our community already. So all of their investment portfolio and everything is in front of everybody. They've just released it just recently. So it's not a... I think there's a whole lot of other places you could go, but this is local, and this has already got an accountability mechanism that gives the council a level of comfort.
I guess if we're looking at long-term investment for this fund, we'd be wanting to look at the history of the Rata Foundation, just not the last 2 to 5 years, but longer, just to get an overview. I mean, there's a lot of work for the group to do. So,
yeah, but it's managed. You've got to look at how it's performing now.
Thank you.
Anyway, it's a concept that's well worth raising, so thank you very much for doing so. Thank you. All right, so if we could have a quick break for morning tea, and we can consider that when we come back. And it's... So 15 minutes, is that enough? 25 past. We're going to restart again at 25 past. Thank you.